When we get up in the morning, along with coffee, toast, and cake. If you're like the old Stone Roadie, you like to wake and bake. Now let's join Craig, Reed, and Griff Martin as you head out on the road. So sit right back, buckle right in. It's a Wake and Bake Morning Show. It's a Wake and Bake Morning Show. It's a Wake and Bake Morning Show. Good morning.
Good morning, everybody. Time to rise and shine. I'm Shelby Barrett, the Stonette for the Stoned Roadie Show, and it's time to Wake and Bake with Craig Reed and Griff Martin.
Wake and Bake, number 10. Stoned Roadie podcast number 125. Action. Alrighty then, and good morning, fellow humans here on planet Earth. My name is Craig Reed, the Stoned Roadie, and this is my co-host, the rocket scientist, Griff Martin. And, well, I guess, this is, what is this? This is Monday morning, ain't it? Yeah, and, Well, yesterday was, the passing of Billy Powell. What was the anniversary? He died, in 2009 or something like that.
Yeah, 2009. Mm-hmm.
And then people got in my case because I forgot to mention that Alan Collins died, in 1990, just 5 days ago. So,
yeah, on the 23rd.
Yeah, but it's awful early. We can't.
And then today, I think you told me that's the anniversary of the Challenger accident too.
Oh yeah. I posted about a bunch of that stuff come up on my timeline yesterday on FakeBook, and I reposted a bunch of that stuff. Yeah, but what else we got? Oh, you know what? I don't want to start off with any health benefit information, and people really get on my case for trying to make them healthy by watching what they eat. But I don't think this one will offend anybody. I heard a little something about toothpaste. I don't know if y'all saw the thing I posted on FakeBook or read it, but that little red, I should have thought about it and brought a little tube with me, but down at the bottom of the tube of toothpaste, there's a little square thing down there, and there's a color down there, and it's either green or blue or red or black. And that's a code for what actually is what they've used to make that toothpaste with. And it turns out that the green color is more natural. It's all natural, made of natural stuff. And the blue, it's a little blue square. It's made with some chemicals. And then if it's red, it's made with a few more chemicals. And if it's black, it's made with all chemicals. So the messed up thing about that is when you buy the tube of toothpaste, you don't know what that color is until you open the box, so it's kind of peculiar why they would do that. But that's about all I got to talk about this.
You mentioned that to me the other day, and I went and ran in the bathroom, and of course mine was black.
Yeah, mine was blue. Yeah, I had Pepsodent. I had Crest something, and it was red. And so I grabbed another box, and I Pepsodent, and it was blue. So I threw the other one away.
I guess I'm gonna have to start opening them at the store whenever I go, and see if before I buy it, they jump my shit. I'll tell them Craig Reed on the Stone Roadie show told me.
John Coulter called me again the other day, and I told him I talked about that the time we drove through that snowstorm, and he told me, he goes, "Yeah, remember that time when that young kid come up and you had your black SWAT boots on and your black cargo pants, and you had a black coat on that said Atlantic Records on it." And kid come up to us and said, "What are you guys, a couple of rock and roll characters?" And John said, I looked at him and said, "Nope, just a couple of characters." I thought that was pretty funny. Yeah.
That robe you got on, isn't that a Japanese robe? Somebody.
Yeah, this is from I think this is from Osaka, and this is from the Royal Hotel in Osaka. Yeah, this is one of my other ones. Yeah.
Yeah, is that from like
Pomona.
76, 77, 76?
75, 6, 7. Yeah, one of those years. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're on number 10 now. Well, you didn't start wearing your robes the first day, did you? When we started to Wake and Bake?
I believe I did. Yeah.
Yeah,
I believe I wore that silk kimono, the first one, didn't I?
Are you keeping track of them and throwing the ones you've already worn in a different pail?
No. No, I'm gonna I'll have to go on search for another hotel chain here pretty soon. I know I got a bunch of them from different ones.
Well, I tell you, we had a pretty good little Sunday morning acoustic yesterday, and we appreciate those guys that sent in, like Mike Powell. Yeah, the guy, Mike Powell, man, he's a pretty good little writer, that guy. And he was talking about hanging around with his redneck friends, and what was that in the song? I don't know if you heard that song that he wrote, but it was pretty cool. And then my buddy Jay and I, we were sitting around drinking beers, playing guitar, and he don't like to get on camera. So I said, "Hey man, let's just go ahead and record it." And so I talked him into doing it. And so we were able to put a little Griff Martin and Jay Sapp on the Sunday morning acoustic for some people to laugh at. And then, of course, Six Gun there at the St. John's Tavern. So if you guys missed a Sunday morning acoustic, you can check that out. It's just still up. So you guys send in some more acoustic songs for us so we can put that on, and if I can get on there and do it, I know you can. So we appreciate it. Just make sure that you send it in a landscape version. I don't know what we figured out what they call that or not, but it can't be portrait. So
we went to screens to meet up with ours to see how our screens meet up to, if you use a skinny thing, you got a space in the middle there. On the side.
Yeah, and then Clayton sent you some stickers, right, Craig?
Yeah, I mentioned that last week that he said he was going to send me 20 stickers, and I said, "Man, if we sold those for $50 a piece, that'd be $1,000." Well, I guess he's going to send me like 100 of them. So it's like, supply and demand. Since he's sending me so many of them, we'll be able to lower the price quite a bit. I guess he's going to be 100 of those. If my math is correct, I guess if we sold those for $25 a piece, there they are. I've seen this before, but they're kind of rare. Let me move my thingy over here. Yeah, they're kind of rare.
Yeah, I've never seen those. That's cool.
Yeah.
So how old are those, you think, Greg?
Well, he had them. Clayton had these. These are from the plane crash era thing. Yeah.
Yeah, see, things keep popping up, man. We got more and more stuff.
These are from Randy Tootin. You can do a Google search on Randy Tootin. He's the guy that designed these. And and he worked for Bill Graham. Like I said, Clayton worked with Bill Graham, and yeah, he designed these, and then we had the plane crash, or I'm confused when these stickers were made, but Randy Tootin made them. But yeah, they're rare, or not rare. Yeah, I guess you'd call them rare. There's there's not many of them, but
New
yeah,
old stock.
yeah, yeah. But Clayton said that he didn't do anything with them because he thought they were like bumper stickers, like they were weatherproof, but he said they're not weatherproof, so he didn't do anything with them. That's why he's got so many of them. And then he's been watching my podcast, and unbeknownst to me, but that I didn't think he watched stuff like this, but I guess he does. But yeah, but that he kind of dug the fact I was doing that, raising money for people. And yeah, Clayton was on the plane crash too. Clayton was on there as well. He was the production manager for Lynyrd Skynyrd at the time. Yeah, so yeah, he was on the plane. So yeah.
Yeah, and speaking of that, Craig, a lot of you guys are talking about, like Sammy was saying, by the time I get my coffee and I'm ready to sit down, and then it's see you later, alligator, after a while, crocodile. And so I'm going to, at the end of this podcast, I'm going to tag on Kenny Peden's interview that I did with him, and I condensed it a little bit, so it's a little shorter. But yeah, we lost Kenny back in August, and you'll notice at the end of that interview, he said he had a lot more stories to tell, and he wanted to come back on and tell, and he never got to do that.
Yeah, that was yeah. I planned on having Kenny on, and then he up and died on us. That was.
Yeah, and that was a great interview that he did. He went through everything that happened on the plane. It's pretty cool interview. So yeah, so that's a little something about that. And back to what we got. We got another one of these books, these Lacey Van Zandt books, Brian Bodkin sent, and it's signed by Lacey. So we want somebody to reach out to us and buy this thing, man. The last book sold for what, Craig?
$610.
Yeah, so we'd like to get at least that much for that one before we put it on eBay. So yeah, if you want to contact Craig, what's your email, Craig?
P.O. Box. My email.
Yeah, your email.
The Stoned Roadie at gmail.com. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. The Stoned Roadie at gmail.com, and you can get in touch with Craig and say, hey, I want that book for $650. And we'll send it right out to you.
I hope we get more than that out of it. Yeah, we were offered $1,000 for the last one. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then all this money goes to. Oh, and by the way, last night the auction closed. And for the sticker, and
backstage Rossington Collins backstage sticker,
backstage Rossington Collins, and the CD that were signed, and the CD went for $121, I think. No, the book went for the sticker went for $121.50. The pass went for, and the CD went for $50. So all that money goes to Mark Howard. Donated stuff by Brandon Campbell, and then
this book, the proceeds for this is going to go to Mark Frank. That's what Brian wanted. The last book went to Mark Howard. This book goes to Mark Frank.
Oh, okay, cool. Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah. Oh, and
Yeah.
that one's in better shape too, huh?
Yeah, this one's almost like brand new. I mean, it's looks like it's, I'd say, an A plus quality for sure. A plus quality. Yeah. And it's a cool book. It's got a lot of great pictures in it, and they're very rare too. And yeah, they so that if anybody's got any more of those books they want to donate, let us know. Send it to Craig Reed, P.O. Box 442, Green, Ohio 44232. So yeah, that's pretty cool. So yeah, you guys stick around and take a look at that Kenny Peden and good old Kenny. I ran across his obituary this morning. That's what made me think about it. And we didn't even know what he died from, and it was cancer.
Yeah, I figured it was.
I
Yeah,
think he had cancer when I was interviewing him, and he didn't tell
yeah,
anybody. He
yeah.
had to have. He had to have.
I think he was a pretty active smoker. Yeah.
Yeah, he had to have had, because it wasn't long after that, and yeah, he was going to come back on, but the poor guy probably couldn't make it. So yeah, so take a look at that. It's a really good. And he tells a story about how Cassie Gaines, how she died, and on the plane, and it was something that bothered him for quite a while until I think he came to grips with it was going to happen the way it happened anyway. But yeah, you guys check that out. And we like to bring attention to the survivors as much as we can, because we like to help the plane crash survivors. And that's why we get donations and we auction things off, and people give us stuff that we can auction off. So we appreciate all of that stuff. And you can always donate anytime you want, $5, whatever, to Craig Reed, P.O. Box 442, Green, Ohio 44232. And we'll tell everybody how we appreciate what you sent in and mention your name and all that good stuff. And yeah, so that's what we got going
Yeah,
there.
we can get $25 out of each one of them stickers. That'd be $2,500, man. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's nothing to sneeze at. And yeah, I was over at my buddy's, Jay again today. I was over to, he's the guy who he died behind the wheel of a car and ran into a cop. And he had a heart attack and ran into this cop. The guy's got like 9 lives, and I was over at his house, and Craig called, and Jay's, I want to ask Craig a question. And I go ahead, And I handed him the phone, and he goes, man, what kind of weed did you smoke back in the day, Craig? Because there was all different kinds back then. It was like Acapulco and Colombian Gold, and you had Micanopy Madness and Gainesville Green and that Thai stick and different kinds of Lebanese hash. I don't know.
God, I remember the first pound of weed I bought, I think was, 1970 or something like that. I think I paid $150 for it, and I think I sold lids for $15 or something like that, and made money.
Yeah, that was about how much I think they were. I mean, that's what I heard. That's how much they were.
But then when I got with the band, I think the weed then was like $35 an ounce or something. Yeah, and it was like Jamaican and Mexican and stuff.
But I don't know if you remember though, but back then weed didn't smell like a skunk. Now it smells like a skunk for some reason. They had skunk weed back then that smelled like a skunk, and now all weed smells like a skunk.
It smelled like hash back then. That Acapulco Gold and the Colombian Gold and the Jamaican. Yeah, it all had a hashy type of smell to it.
Now, if you keep it in your car, you can smell the unburned weed in your car. Stinks your car up.
Oh, it's just
terrible. Back then, it didn't do that. I'm sorry if you guys out there in television land watching this disagree with me or agree with me. Help me out on that, because I swear to God, weed didn't stink like that back then, and now it does.
The weed I get doesn't smell like skunky like that. I don't like that stuff.
No,
And
it's
I get the old I get the old little buds. I call them nuggy buds. It's like the old
the homegrown stuff.
yeah. No, yeah, I get that sometimes too. Yeah, but
Because
mostly
weed now doesn't have seeds in it.
it's mostly the it's mostly just looks like the old stuff I get just looks like the old stuff. It's gold with red and green hairs in it and stuff. Kind of that little hashy taste. Yeah.
And then when you were
But
in
back
Europe,
then, you got tied stick. And said, what kind of weed is that? It's this weed that's tied on a stick. And
yeah, that's if they did that, you got more money
but
for it.
and Maui Wowie. I remember during Washington Collins, I said I'll never I'll never pay $300 for an ounce of weed. It just ain't no way, And we were down there in Miami, and they had some weed, and the guy had it was 300. I said, "I'll pay 300 for that." But it was that skunky smelling stuff. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
they had that Afghan weed back then, and the seeds were like really big, and they had what we call them tiger stripes on them, and that plant would grow kind of like low to the ground with wide leaves on it, and the thing was you got more of a harvest off of it if it grew squat instead of tall. But I'm not an expert on it, but so some of
Yeah,
those
but
guys knew what they were doing.
Jay asked me if how about Japan? Did you guys get any weed in Japan? And you couldn't, man. When I was smuggling weed around Japan, God, I think the penalty for pot over there was 20 years or something, man. All that, I was an international drug smuggler. I swear. I held the band's weed all of, I was the one. I was the carrier. I was the mule.
You were the patsy.
Yeah, I was the patsy. Yeah.
But didn't you say that if you always got stopped and then the band would keep going and they'd say Craig's going to beat us back to the hotel room? Watch.
Yeah. I was with Leon that one time, and he got stopped, and I was with him, so they searched me too, and I had all the drugs on me, and they were asking me all kind of questions, going through my suitcase, and the guy pulled out a thing of baggies, and I goes, I do the band's wardrobe, and when they leave, earrings and necklaces and rings and all the kind of stuff in the dressing room after the show, I just throw stuff in baggies, and it's easily identified, and he accepted that as a valid excuse. And then he went through another case, and there was another box full of baggies.
Then he ran into that finger
I said, yeah, we
scale.
got a lot of jewelry, we got a lot.
Yeah, you remember the little scale you hung it on your finger, and you could weigh like a bag of dope off of that little finger scale. That thing couldn't be that accurate,
They held me back, and the band bus, it just took off, They thought some of them thought I might go to jail, I guess. But Gary said he'll beat us back to the hotel, and they got to the hotel, and I was already there.
And just like he said.
Oh God, yeah, I used to.
And then when they emptied your trailer out looking for drugs, and then they couldn't find any drugs, and they had to load everything back in, they thought they were going to get to haul it down to the police compound.
Yeah, I got away with everything. I never got caught doing anything. Never did. The only thing I got caught doing.
It seemed like I heard Chad told me you went to jail for Allen one time.
Yeah, for lying at the scene of an accident. Yeah. Well, they took us both.
Yeah, and then didn't they shave your head or something?
I tried to tell him I was driving when Alan flipped the car at Mercedes end over end. They pulled us out of the car and it was upside down and sideways. And the guy pulled me out. And cops asked who was driving, and I said I was. He goes, no, I pulled him out of the passenger seat. He's that other long-haired guy. He was driving.
They're both long-haired guys.
Lying, yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty good. You go to jail for your
my hair was caught in the my side window of the Mercedes 450, and when I finally got undone, I looked up and all I saw was a bare foot going like this. It was Alan was in the back seat. And his foot was going through the thing.
What, he lost his shoe, or he was in the car barefooted to start with?
He never wore shoes.
Oh, no?
No, none of them did. They all went barefooted.
No shit.
All the time, yeah.
Yeah, I believe it. But Ronnie was the only one, I guess, barefoot on stage. Somebody asked a question about a drum riser that you built. I was going through the comments. I guess you and Artimus.
Oh yeah, I was talking about when I became a drum roadie last week. I started out, I didn't know anything, and I worked on Bob Burns's drums. He had that blue set of drums, and that's, when you do that, you have to kind of learn how to tune them, and that's, one time I changed drum heads, and I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And I asked Gary, how do you tune drums? He had no clue how to tune drums. Yeah. So, I had to learn how to tune drums, and then.
But you built that riser.
Well, that was Bob Burns's drum. Yeah, but then when Artimus became the drummer, he had that silver set of drums, and then we put him together a 5 or 7 ply maple set. I forget how many plies it was, but yeah, and then we built the riser to match the natural wood drums, and so we had the maple. The drum riser, it had the maple skirt around it, and then we built an aluminum frame that was 2 4x4 sections, and it would fold in the middle up like this, and so we could, when you folded it up, it had rollers on it, so you could fold it up and roll it away, and then you pull it back down, and then had a plywood. 3/4 inch plywood top that folded in the middle, so just all kind of went together. It was pretty cool. And then he had a PV monitors for his monitors. He had a PV system, amps, and a board and everything. He had his own little PA system back there. Had the PV big PB speakers, man. You kick that bass drum and your hair would fly apart.
Yeah, I remember Joe Crimp.
Boy.
Joe Crimp did the sound test at Lakeland 2 shows before the plane crash, and it was him and Steve Gaines, and he said he went and got on Artemis's drums, and he was like, wow, it's like sitting in a spaceship or something, man. He said those drums were like, they're at the end. Artimus had him a set of drums.
Yeah, we put him a nice set of drums together. Yeah, sure.
You were telling me about tuning those cymbals and how you can break them.
Cleaning the cymbals, yeah. If you got to clean the cymbals. You get fingerprints on them. You learn after a while to wear gloves when you're handling cymbals. Yeah, but that they have to clean them. They're real big around. So if you lay them on something to clean them, if you push on them, they'll flex, and you don't want to push on them and flex them, or you'll see all the ridges around there, and if you push on them and flex them, you'll make them weak and they'll snap.
I believe this was one of Artimus cymbals. This came from Brandon.
That one needs some brasso on it. Yeah.
It was like this when I got it. Craig jumped my shit. You need to clean that.
Yeah, never dull or brasso. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll get some brasso cleaner and clean that thing up, and we'll auction that thing off too. I'll have to find out where it came from. I'm not for sure where that came from. Steve Reynolds or somebody gave that to somebody that ended up here, but yeah. So yeah, we'll figure out what we're gonna do with it. But yeah, so that's about all I got there, Craig, and I guess we can go ahead and kick off that Kenny Peden. Well, you got anything else?
Well, yeah, there was something else you said you were gonna talk about, and I forgot what it was, but
yeah, I don't see it here in my notes. We've gone through everything on the notes. Yep, that's all I got. Other than what you
something I forget. Oh well, whatever.
Well, we'll save it for the next. We'll save it for the next one.
It's early in the morning. I had a pretty good buzz going this morning. I'm kind of out of it here.
Yeah, a lot of times I'll call Craig and he'll already gone back to bed with the dogs. I'll say, hey, Craig, did you see where, so and so and so? He said, I'm back in bed now. Once I get up, I don't go back to bed unless I'm sick. Which I don't want to have any part of being sick again after that Gillsburg flu that I caught. That was pretty rough. But yeah, so we'll go ahead and roll that Kenny Peden footage, and you guys can listen to Kenny. It's a pretty good interview, and unless you got something else, Craig, then we'll go ahead and wrap it up.
No, got nothing this morning. All righty then. Yeah, this has been podcast 125, and yeah, happy trails to you until we meet again, and may the good Lord take a liking to you. And see you later, alligator, at the wild crocodile. And that was podcast 125, and cut.
Well, we have a special guest here today. Craig was going to come on today, but he wanted to make plenty of room for Ken Peden to tell his story. Ken Peden is basically a sound engineer guy that was working for Lynyrd Skynyrd at the time when the plane went down. Of course, he had some significant injuries, but he was able to walk away from it with those injuries. And he, along with Artimus Pyle and Mark Frank, was able to go through the swamp of the Mississippi forest that they crashed in and find a farmhouse. And a lot of people don't really know anything other than the Artimus Pyle story. So welcome to the Stone Roadie show, Ken Peden. It's nice to have you. You were telling me a little something about the plane that you guys had before the Convair 240 that went down. And you were telling me compared to that, it was a Cadillac.
Oh yeah.
Tell a little bit about that plane.
I believe the model is Convair 680. I'm not sure. But what they do is, I think that the Convairs, that model plane was built in the early 50s. And it was a KLM airliner, 52 passenger. And they sold it. They sold it to Jerry Lee Lewis. And Jerry Lee, they ripped all the seats out and, put the couches and the nice stuff in it and little TV monitors. But they took the engines off of it, the old piston engines, and they put Rolls-Royce turbines, which is a turbine driving a propeller as opposed to a piston engine, which really improves the performance of the airplane. and it was a great airplane. And I used to sit up front in the jump seat. There's a seat you can fold down between the pilot and the co-pilot, and put the headphones on and listen to all the traffic and watch them take off and fly and land and all that stuff, because I was really big into aviation. And like I said, compared to the other plane, it was Cadillac. Now, that was the first tour I did with them. After that tour, we did the Japan, England, European stuff, came back, took a break, and then met them down in Georgia. I believe at Georgia, we did rehearsals. And I checked my memory. I think that's the first time that I saw Steve Gaines. I can't remember if Steve, no, I take it back. Steve was on all the other tours. First time I saw Steve was the Day on the Green gig. So anyway, did rehearsals, and then we go get on the plane. And we got on this plane, and it looks the same. I can tell it was a different plane. Propellers are a little different. We got on it, and we got ready to take off. First thing I noticed is he gets out on the end of the tarmac there, and he does a run-up, which is normal for airplanes. But I never saw Les Long do it in the other plane because it was turbine engine. He did the run-up checklist before, while we were taxiing. But this guy, he's running up both engines, and he's running up for a long time, checking everything, I guess. And it just kind of gave me the feeling that he wasn't quite up to snuff, the same pilot as Les was. We're on the same level. So anyway, I blew it off, and we took off. And when we took off, that thing rolled and rolled and rolled down the runway, and I'm thinking, shit, is he going to get off the ground or what? Finally lifted off, and it did a really, really slow, slight incline climb. For the other plane, I was used to him to, taking off and gone.
So that
was my
that kind of bothered you.
Yeah, it did bother me because, I was going through my mind at the time. It wasn't too long before that Jim Croce had gotten killed in Louisiana. And what happened to them is they were in a plane, and it took off, and it failed to gain enough altitude, and it hit pine trees at the end of the runway. So I'm thinking this as we're going down the runway, I'm going, man, how far away are we from the pine trees at the end of this thing? But it finally got up and cleared. So that was my first experience with that plane. It did bother me. It definitely bothered me.
And then after that incident, I think most people that I've talked to that were on the plane that went down, I think, the real scary part, I believe, began in Lakeland. Is that correct? It was, trying to think exactly what city we did, Georgia, then we did a couple of shows, Gainesville, Lakeland. I think it was a flight from Lakeland to Greenville. Yeah. The right engine started sputtering. It was mid-flight. It was in the middle of the night. We always flew at night. And there was a flame coming out the exhaust of this engine. This flame's a good 3, 4, 5 feet long. Now, that's a little scary, when you look out the window of your airplane and there's blowtorch blowing out the exhaust. And I think Gene Odom went up, told the pilot, co-pilot comes back, and then they adjusted something and the flame went out. Found out later on it was the carburetor was running extra rich. So what was happening is the fuel was going through the engine and not being burned completely. And then when it hit the exhaust, it ignites. Right. Yeah.
It looks like a jet. So that was the problem with that, which became a problem later on the other flight. So that was the first real alarm.
So what was the feel like with everybody that was flying the plane? Was everybody like aware of that and getting nervous because of that? And did it give them any animosity as far as being on the plane that you knew of, or what was the feel for the plane as far as the guys flying on the plane?
Well, nobody was real comfortable with it. It was different degrees of being worried about it. I wasn't that worried about it because when I used to fly up front with Les Long on the other plane, I was just asking him questions all the time.
Yeah.
About how far will it glide when you lose an engine and so on and so forth. And it had a really good glide ratio. So I figured, it's a twin engine plane. We lose one engine, we can still fly on one engine. It's not that big a deal. And I think we did a show that next day, and I got the word that there was a mechanic going to meet us in Baton Rouge, and they were going to change carburetors out or something to that effect. So I didn't worry about it too much. Now, my understanding is that there was Cassie and a couple of other people really were wound up about it.
Yeah.
But I wasn't that afraid of it.
So after the Greenville show, and then the next day when you guys were getting on the plane, was it a normal day getting on the plane, or were there people kind of talking about getting on the plane then? Was there any kind of hesitation in anybody as far as getting on the plane, or did everybody just seem?
Not that I was aware of. I've heard the stories about, Cassie didn't want to get on the plane. She wanted to ride in the truck with Bud Rock and little Jim, the equipment semi. And I think Ronnie basically wanted to keep the group together. He didn't want them scattered. So he said, no, we all need to travel together. So I don't know what the personal conversation went on with them, but she got on the plane. There wasn't, a couple of people were wound up about it, but then I would hear, but they're going to fix it in Baton Rouge and it won't be a problem. So at that point, we didn't worry too much about it.
So once you guys got on the plane, where was it that you were seated?
I was seated, I looked up the chart once. I think they'd call it seat 15, but basically it was over the right wing where the wing attaches to the fuselage. There's a couple of rows of seats there. And I've always been told, I wasn't sitting there on purpose, but I've always been told that that's the strongest part of the airplane because that's where the wings attach to the body and it has to be reinforced. Didn't think much of it at the time, but I guess it was a good move to sit there. But I'm not sure if it made a whole lot of difference where you were sitting on that plane, because when that thing hit, I got ready for the crash and I knew it was coming. Strapped in, put a blanket in my lap, put my face down, lock your arms under your legs. The whole thing they tell you on airliners, in case you're going to crash. Or they used to tell you. They don't say that anymore because they don't want to scare people. But it ripped my seat completely out of the floor. Just ripped the bolts out and just threw me up through the front of the plane. I was told this. I don't remember it. I was knocked unconscious. But I was told the seats were ripped out. So didn't make a whole lot of difference exactly where you were sitting. What made a difference is if you were ready for it or not. Because the really strange thing, and it bothered me for a long time, I was sitting in the same row with Cassie. And she was sitting by the window and I'm sitting on the aisle seat, 2 seats in this row. And we're looking out the window because it was October sky. It was beautiful. The sun was going down. It was orange and you could see the contrails from the other planes. It was just gorgeous sunset. And we were sitting there talking about that and what we were going to do that night. We had the night off in Baton Rouge. And she got up to do something and walked up to the front of the plane when all this trouble started. And then when they said, everybody strap in, she came running back down the aisle. So just to make it a little faster and expedite the situation, I just jumped over to the next seat to let her get in. So me and her actually switched seats. And for a long time, it kind of worried me because, it killed her and I got hurt, but not that bad. And then I realized it wasn't the fact that we had switched seats, but what happened, and I do remember part of this, I got in this crash position and Cassie at the last minute popped her seatbelt loose and stood up. Because if you stood up, you could see down the aisle and see through the windshield of the plane. And I think she got up and stood and right when the impact hit and just threw her forward.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's some good information there. So, yeah.
And I was strapped in my seat. Like I say, I ripped my seat out of the floor, but at least I was balled up and it didn't, break my neck and I understand that she had her throat cut or had some really deep cuts or something. And I'm pretty sure that's what killed Cassie. It wasn't the seat she was sitting in. It was the fact that she didn't brace herself and she stood up. Now, I mean, you're standing up and you hit something in a car or a boat, you're going to go flying forward.
Yeah.
So I think that's what happened to Cassie.
Who else were you sitting around on the plane? You remember anybody specifically?
Not really. I mean, I mean, almost everybody was there. I do remember that off to the left side, there was like a couch, and it had seatbelt straps in it too. And a lot of the times, Alan would sit there, and Dean and a couple other people, and shoot the breeze and that kind of thing. What occurred to me later on was usually Ronnie always sat in the back of the plane because there was a poker table back there. And those guys played poker all the time on the plane.
Yeah.
This particular day, he had a back issue and headache or something. So I think Gene had given him a sleeping pill and maybe some kind of pain pill. And he was laying down. The only place to really lay down on this plane was in the aisleway in front of the passenger compartment on the way to the cockpit. So he was laying down there, and Leslie was, massaging his back and trying to work out the kinks and that kind of stuff. And when all this trouble started, and of course, when that happened, she got up and ran back to her seat, and he got up and sat in the most convenient place, was on the couch. And I brought that up because had he been in the back of the plane playing poker as normal, he may have survived the crash. But the fact that he was up there in the front and sitting on a couch, basically sideways with a seatbelt on, wasn't very secure. Not as secure as sitting in a seat strapped in. And I think that's probably had a lot to do with it, because from what I've been told, it threw him into a forward bulkhead and he hit his head, and that's what killed him. So I just thought that was a little strange. All these little things that happen, affect your life.
So whenever you noticed the plane having an issue, what was the first thing that it did? What was it doing that brought to your attention there was an issue?
The same engine we had that problem with on the flight before began to sputter. And I'm thinking, well, that carburation problem is back. But instead of continuing to sputter, it just shut down, literally stopped turning. And I thought, oh, God, great. Now we're flying on one engine, but I knew the plane could fly on one engine. And about that time, the left engine started to sputter.
Oh, damn.
And then it shut down. I think we were somewhere about 12,000 feet. So all of a sudden now we're a glider. Got no power. And Gene Odom ran up to the cockpit, had a little conversation with one of the pilots, came back, and he was pissed off, cussing, saying something to the effect of, the pilot said, oh, shit. What do you do when your pilot says, oh, shit? So everybody strap in. So we all strapped in, and I got into that crash position. And, for a while there, I'm looking out the window, and I'm watching this thing going down. And you can see, we're over forest. And I'm thinking, well, he's got to find a field here to put it down. And there was a couple of fields. I think, well, he's probably going to belly land it in, one of those fields. As he got lower, I heard the gear go down. I think it was the gear. And I went, man, what little bit I knew about flying, you don't drop your gear when you're in a glide path with no power, because it's like putting the brakes on. It started creating more drag. So when you drop the gear, the glide path went from a slight angle to a steeper angle because it was slowing down. And then it began to hit trees, and it sounded like somebody just beating on the plane. And bam, 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 bam. And that was about the last thing I remember. It did knock me out completely, because when I came to, I was actually on my feet, standing outside the plane, holding my head, because, I'm just waking up from a bad dream. And then I remembered, oh, wow, the plane was going down. And Artimus and Mark Frank were there with me. And it was almost completely dark. You could barely see anything. You could see the basic outline of the plane, but I knew there was nothing we could do except go find some help somewhere. So
then you guys were all standing together there, and then what did you? Who was kind of like saying that we need to go get help? Was that all of you together were mentioning that, or? Well,
Artimus was the first one to speak up. He said, "Man, we have got to go get some help, because we can't help these people, because the plane was mangled and it was basically dark, like I said." So he says, we got to find some help. And you could see through the woods, you could see a little bit of a light. And what it was is one of those security light posts that people put in their yards.
Right.
So we figured, that's the only civilization around. We got to head toward that light. So we started walking through the woods, and we came up to a creek, a small creek. And my left arm was banged up pretty good. I had a concussion and broke a nose. And I'm thinking, I'm not crossing that creek because I can't swim in this condition. So, I'm likely to drown. I'm not going to cross the creek. And Artimus just jumps in the middle of the creek, and he goes, it's not very deep, just past his knees. So at that point I said, okay, we'll wade across the creek. But, that's just the way he was. So wade across the creek, finally got to the edge of the woods, and right on the edge of the woods is barbed wire fence, cow pasture. So we, crawled through the barbed wire fence and started walking across this cow pasture toward the light. And I noticed there was cattle all over this place. And I'm thinking, I'm banged up, not in real good shape, survived the plane crash. All I need now is for a bull to come out here and run over my ass. So we kept walking. The cattle didn't bother us. We got to another barbed wire fence at the edge of a road. And we're climbing through this barbed wire fence. And this pickup truck was flying down the road. And he was flying. And he went right past us. We were waving, trying to get him to stop. He went down the road about half a mile, turns around, comes flying back again. And we're going like, hey, and he went right past us again, pulled up in a driveway in his house, and that's where the security light was, his house. And that was Johnny Modes. Anyway, so he pulled up in a driveway. So we're walking down the fence, and we walk across his lawn up toward his house, and he pulled a shotgun out of the truck and fired that thing over our head. And at that point, I'm thinking, okay, I survived the plane crash. The bull didn't kill me. Now this redneck farmer is going to shoot me. And I hit the dirt. And I think everybody else did too. Except maybe Artimus didn't. I don't know. He was pretty ballsy. And we were yelling like, hey, we were in a plane crash on the other side of that cow pasture. And I think Johnny at that point realized we were telling the truth. I can't blame him for acting the way he did because, we were beat up and bloody. We all had long hair, like right. The cavemen walking around. Yeah. And later on, I found out that at that point, there was a helicopter flying around with a spotlight. It was Air Sea Rescue trying to find that plane. And Johnny thought it was the sheriff chasing escaped convicts. It was a pea farm not far from there. So, Johnny had good reason to be concerned. I would have been too.
Yeah, I think, that all made sense when you see a helicopter and then three mangled, guys come walking out of the woods. So at that point, I guess you went inside the house and tried to call some people or whatever, and then you were taken to the hospital then, right? Right. He took us in the house. His wife was in there, and we sat on the couch, and I kept trying to go to sleep, pass out, and Artimus was slapping me, going, "Don't go to sleep." He knew a little bit more about that than I did. Yeah. Because you have a concussion, you're not supposed to go to sleep. Right. Yeah. So he kept slapping me, going, "Wake up, wake up!" And I said, "Look," I said, "you got to call Air Sea Rescue. They're going to be looking for us, and tell them where we are." And the lady got on the phone. She made a couple of calls, and then she said, "Okay, well, we're going to put you in a car and drive you to the hospital." So me and Mark Frank got in the car. I can't remember. I think Artimus stayed behind because he was going to show him where the plane was or something to that effect. And we're driving to the hospital, and this lady is just, she's got it floorboarded, and she's down these windy country roads, and it's freaking me out. I said, "Lady, damn, take it easy. I just survived a plane crash. I don't want to get killed in a car wreck." Right. So, but anyway, she got us to the hospital, and as we got to the hospital, these guys, they were so together. They had gurneys, doctor, nurse lined up on the sidewalk outside the emergency room entrance, ready for casualties to come in.
You know, they put me on the stretcher and took me in and went to OR and knocked me out, I guess. They stitched me up because when I came to again, I was in my hospital bed. So
you and Mark were the first two to arrive at the hospital before everybody else. And then, so you never, how long were you in the hospital?
I was only there overnight. My parents, you know, it was 100 miles from where I grew up. So my parents had heard on the radio that the Skynyrd plane had gone down in Macomb, and they knew I was on that tour. So, you know, they got in the car and drove to Macomb to the hospital, not knowing if I was dead or not. And they got to the hospital, you know, and they came in after I came out of OR. And so my mother and my father showed up, and the doctor said, well, just, you know, let him stay in here a few hours and then we'll release him to you and you can take him home. Because basically they just had, you know, a broken nose, arm was banged up, concussions, cuts, but nothing serious. So they released me the next morning and I went home.
And Mark, I guess he was just about the same as you. Did he was released pretty fast too, or was he?
I don't know. You know, I kind of lost touch with everybody because, you know, I'm in my own hospital room. The only person I really saw after that was Judy Van Zandt. She was, I guess, making the rounds, and I saw her walk by the open door, and I called to her. I didn't know Judy that well, but I'd met her a couple of times, knew who she was, and I said, Judy. And she came in and gave me this big hug. And at that point, I think I knew that Ronnie had died. I can't remember exactly. And she must have known too, because she was pretty broken up. When she comes in and gives me a big hug, says, "You're okay?" I said, "Yeah, I'm fine." And she left and continued making the rounds to everybody else. But I never saw anybody else from the crew or the band, because when they released me, you know, I'm still kind of dinged up and dizzy. I went and got in the car with my parents, drove me home, and everybody else is still in their own rooms or in OR or had been flown out to other hospitals. Never saw anybody after that.
And the crazy thing is that you went on to get your pilot's license after that.
Yeah, that was some years later. It was about 1990. I was married to a girl. She was lifer Air Force, and she was stationed over here at Keesler Air Force Base, and they had an aero club. So you could go down to the aero club and go to ground school and, you know, get an instructor, and they teach you how to fly. And they had their own airplanes. You could rent them for, I think it was like $70 an hour or something like that. So her and I both went down there and got instructors and learned how to fly, because I was always interested in aviation. I loved it. And I just loved the idea of flying my own plane. So, you know, we got licensed. She got hers. About a year later, she got transferred to Greece. There was an air base there in Heraklion, and it was nicknamed Club Med, because if you were in the Air Force, this was the place you wanted to be. It was on the beach in Crete, Greece. It was beautiful.
Wow.
And I mean, it was great. And they had a airport nearby, and they rented airplanes there. So we went down there and we'd rent airplanes on the weekend and we'd fly around the Greek islands. I mean, not many people get to do that kind of stuff.
Well, you got right back. You got right back on the horse. You know.
Oh yeah. Well, within 3 or 4 days after the crash, I'm staying at my parents' house. At the time, I was living in California. You know, with a lady out there that I'd known for a while. So about 4 days later, you know, Showcoke, you know, they were in touch with me and they said, "Look, we'll fly you home." Sent me a ticket. So I got on a plane and I'm flying to San Jose, and everything's going good. Except we got in over the Rockies there and started hitting turbulence and shook up the plane pretty good. And I started kind of freaking out a little bit. And the stewardess comes over and she goes, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Well, I'm a little worried." She goes, "Well, have you flown before?" I said, "Yeah, I've flown before. I was in a plane crash about 4 days ago." She goes, "Oh my God, let me buy you a drink." And so I said, "Jack Daniels." In fact, give me several of them. But I had a few Jack Daniels there just to calm me down a little bit, because I was fine up to then. When that thing started bumping around, it's like, man, it's bringing back some bad memories.
Well, that was a great story. You know, a lot of people, I don't think they've heard a lot of things that you told in that story. And I think they're going to be really interested to hear this. And your ability to be able to talk about it was outstanding. You know, you seem to, I guess it's so long ago that it's probably easier for people, but I couldn't imagine, you know, having to go through something like that. Really appreciate you coming on and telling it. The people that watch the Stoned Roadie show, you know, they like all kinds of Skynyrd stories and things. And, you know, that plane crash is part of it. So Craig was wanting to get different perspectives of what happened. And
well, that was plane crash is only one, so I got a lot of stories about Skynyrd. We'll get back to that.
Yeah, we'll have to get back to that. So we'll get you back on again and dissect some more of those stories. Appreciate you coming on, Ken. And we'll have you back. And thanks a lot.
Very good. Thank you. See you soon.
All right. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.